Yo, what's up, Headspaces? This is VJ, the brother from the ancient mother. You are watching the Headspace, South Africa, and the rest of Africa's most hip-hop podcast, because that's what we do. We talk about hip-hop as it navigates through Africa, and if you're watching this right now, you're watching the review section. Now, the artist whose project I'm about to review is the beneficiary of the times that we live in. What do I mean by that? The turn of the internet age has catapulted into a metamorphosis that has shifted the landscape of how it is artists capture people's attention. Previously, old media used to cash in on the fact that established brands with big corporates backing them were the only way that talented artists could kind of breach from the personal capacity of their own artistic vision to a greater audience. Come the power of streaming, come the power of social media, come the power of this synchronicitous direct access to an audience, all of that has changed. And as a result, artists now have the privilege to directly engage with people as they make art. And what this has done is the attention economy, as it is now called, is something that artists get to directly drive themselves. And I think the only thing that majors really do is they still kind of dangle the opportunity of greater publishing, they dangle the opportunity of greater mass marketing. But when it comes to the industry of influence, by golly, you bet the fact that social media, net discourse here, internet, has massively shifted the scope and has allowed many talented artists, especially if we're talking rap in South Africa, to kind of just take the phone, turn it around, and do what they do best. And those who have been able to resonate with audiences because of their skill, narrative, and just power to relate to the human experience have found something that is able to allow them to leverage the kind of deals that many would envy in boardrooms. Because now, even established old media is beginning to realize that the currency of the people is in the artist. And the only thing left for the artist to do is find lanes to find publishing avenues and direct marketing avenues that can be divorced from old establishment. This particular rapper is an interesting case study to how that is beginning to happen. TSA is a rapper from the classically famous township of Soweto, which is associated with the mixture of revolution and pop culture. Soweto has become kind of like South Africa's most publicized and as a result most marketed township, and because of that, something about Soweto lends itself to the general pop culture as a township. And you know, there's positive and negative aspects to that, because when we use the same kind of struggle as a marketing ploy for tourism, it kind of keeps us in a place where we can't develop Soweto too much, because we still want a part of Soweto that speaks to struggle. So we market struggle as a niche. It's weird. But anyways, the most important thing about kind of mentioning the fact that this artist is from Soweto is because that plays into how Sowetans, Abantu baseSoweto, kind of position themselves in the marketplace. They understand the value of culture because they grew up in a place where the spotlight of culture is constantly, shining on it. And TSA is no difference. A young rapper, pretty much from this internet age, who displays qualities that are really aspirationally global. The impressive thing about TSA is not so much his rap skill per se. As a rapper, I'm gonna be honest with you, he is as average as they come to me. What do I mean? I mean the fact that he's not doing anything massively impactful to the style of language. He's not changing flows in ways that are mind-blowingly unique. He's not adding a new dimension to rapping as a whole, particularly South African or African rap. What he is a talented mimic of foreign styles. He reminds you of somebody like a Kota the Friend, or you know, these massively introspective and conversational rappers who use this mellow, jazzy, sample-laden sound to kind of tell simple narratives about the intimacy of everyday human life. And he falls into this neat formula, and it's amazing. He's really amazing at being formulaic, and as a result, I think he's understood his own power, because what he does is that he basically raps over the South African experience. He raps in ways that seem to ignore the immediate demographic of where he comes from. And I think it's because he understands that the kind of voice, flow, and music he makes easily lends itself to the Western, quote-unquote, American dimension. And as a result, if he were to be picked up by labels or any platform that kind of pays attention to art right now, which fits into this indie rap air and atmosphere, he'd easily be able to kind of bridge himself as a part of a unique class of artists who are kind of banking on being part of an established archetype of art. And the thing is, that's all good and fine, but it gets difficult when you're trying to innovate. There's a lot of artists who are busy doing this, as even South Africans. The rapper we were talking about just off the camera, Takeza, who released an album last year.
Oh, Viwe
Joka is kind of navigating the same lane, and I think TSA is pretty much an artist who's molding himself in that light. Because when we look at Viwe Joka, it is things like being on the famous YouTube platform Colors that allowed for his market value to breach beyond the country. And I think TSA has spoken to this demographic, this global demographic of young indie rap, but more orientated in the Western side of the world from his inception. And the one thing that helps him kind of transcend South Africa is his packaging. He is the brother of creative director and model Bambata Jones. So his visual aspect is crisp, it's surrounded by vividness, it's minimalistic yet so poignant. He's able to create videos and short little snippets of his raps that dive you into the interest by the sheer quality of the videos in their artistic, direction. And it isn't so much his actual innovation that takes the foreground. And I think there's something tricky about that, because when I, as a critical theorist of music, have to listen to his music outside of his videos, I'm not inspired as much as I am when I'm watching it. And Something's in the Water, his latest EP, 3 tracks, is something that woke me up to that idea. 3 tracks that pretty much speak to how the industry undermines him. Some people in the industry require his skill. He's not going to easily fall into the tropes of being another A. Reese. So he's talking about how the currency of his market value has kind of gone up because of his videos and because of his profile. And the first track in particular, Divine, it kind of proves just how mediocre he is, because he uses a structure that kind of borrows from Kendrick Lamar's High Power, Visions of Martin Luther Staring at Me, and he uses the structure of Visions of What and What doing this to kind of carry the rest of the song. So visions of women talking to him in a certain kind of way, visions of the industry negotiating this, visions of his family taking care of him, and it's beautiful, poignant stories of where he is in life. But the thing is, they're delivered in a way where they don't speak too much to something extra special. You feel like you've heard it all before, and it doesn't help that the sonic scope of this EP kind of remains in this lull, monotonous place where it's hazy, sample-laden songs that are kind of off kilter, and then it shifts when we go to tracks like Doubt Me, to songs that kind of implore this 808 but still kind of filter the drum in the midst of these female vocal samples that give the artist enough room to just spit simple, easy conversations. And again, he lends himself to a critique that I have been pointing at a lot of rappers. He speaks in collective, popular jargon. He speaks in platitudes. He speaks in ways that don't innovate language. And as a result, all of his lines feel familiar. His rhyme patterns feel familiar. And familiarity is great as an introduction, but at some point, you establish a relationship with your audience where they require more of you, because they could just easily go to the person you're inspired by. So with TSA, I think playing into that by Luan Star, Kota the Friend, Pocket is something that's going to be very challenging when he wants to challenge himself. But right now, it's in a safe place, and that's what this EP is. It's safe. It's safe enough to allure a global market, and kind of safe enough to be played around a couple of intimate spaces, whether we're talking about the scene in Brahm, if you're a student trying to kind of show your appeal in the indie market. But ultimately, true artistry, the kind of artistry that shakes the ground, the kind of artistry that makes the atmosphere echo up, is not something that's found in this. And I think it's a shame, because this is an artist who I feel possesses a lot of writing potential to stretch himself, and he really doesn't here. This really for me is a borderline project, and as a result I gotta give it a 4 out of 10, because it doesn't even get to the mid mark, because its brevity and its simplicity, not minimalism, simplicity, get to a place where it just doesn't go beyond 1 or 2 listens. So as a result, here's one thing we can learn from TSA. If your visuals are off the hook, your story is told with such a captivating edge that you can go anywhere with it, but it's still going to be about the music when push comes to shove. And I think musically, TSA still needs to show us, number one, is he truly rapping for South Africans? Because this is not what I hear. I hear somebody who's rapping for a hypothetical audience that could live anywhere and everywhere. But I think specificity is important as an artist. You have to at some point speak to a particular demographic, because those are the people that are going to hail your name to everybody else. So as a result, that's the album for me. It falls in line with one of those great examples of typicality. It's yet another example of somebody being tremendously mediocre and cashing in from it, because capitalism supports mediocre reproduction, because it gets to have 1,000 versions of the same thing and sell over and over again to people until it gets tired.